Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome. This is Rochelle with the Healing Rose, and today I'm doing the hashtag my 10 most neglected decks of 2023. This is a VR to highly sensitive tarot, and I'm sure I've seen a few different VRs already, which is really interesting for me. I enjoy looking at seeing why people did or didn't work with the deck throughout the year. I think Lullin Tarot also did a response that I saw. And so there's a lot of really cool ones out there. I highly recommend going and taking a look at that because I think it really gives us a good insight, right? When we're buying a deck, we might have the best of intentions, but if for some reason it actually doesn't resonate with where we are on our tarot journey or oracle journey, then then it things get complicated, things get left on the shelf for a while. So all right, so these are in no particular order. These are just 10 of the decks that I planned to study and work with more deeply this year, and for whatever reason just ended up never picking them up all year long. The year just went by in a blur. So the first is the Llewellyn Tarot, and I received it in a box set many ages and ages ago. And what I like about the companion book, as opposed to, I guess, when you just buy the deck by itself, is that it does give us a lot of information about the Welsh mythology. There's a lot of card info. There's some layout information. So the deck itself does have two cards that are spread cards that are included with the deck. And it gives us some in-depth for the Celtic cross and the horseshoe. So when we get to the major arcana and we start looking at the cards, it tells us about the character that is represented. So it's not just the high priestess per se. Let's just flip to the high priestess. And so it doesn't just give us, the high priestess does X, Y, Z, right? This gives us the description of the imagery, and then it tells us the tale of Carr-Gromm. So it gives background and information about Carr-Gromm. It gives some mythology or a storyline, and then it gives us upright meaning and then reversed meaning. So there's a lot going on here. So we're not just like learning how to use the tarot, but we're really looking at some of the myths that can be woven in to reflect those different characters within the major arcana. So I really enjoy the book, and I've had, I've had moments where I sit down and I actually like to just, I love stories. So I like to just sit and just read the stories. But I have not yet done an in-depth study, and it's absolutely gorgeous. It is very Rider-Waite-Smith in its design and focus. So the minor cards will be very, very familiar to you if you have any kind of dealings with the RWS tarot system. So that makes it very readable. But I find it interesting in the major, we have like 15, the horned ones. So it's not the devil, but it's the wild herdsman. And then there's a whole myth around that it kind of shades the card in a little bit different way, right? So I actually really want to spend more time, hey puppy, going through this deck because it's beautiful, and I keep meaning to trim it down, but I don't want to trim it down until I've spent time really working with it and really getting to know it, so that I feel like I really need to know a deck before I go more in depth, right? And this year I kept meaning to, I kept putting it over on the side of my desk and meaning to sit down with it, and the year just kind of got away from me. So that's one that is still on my list to be worked with, and hopefully we can get to it within this upcoming year, and we can spend a little bit more time on our tarot study. Okay, so very similar story with the Druid Tarot. So this one, and I know the reason I have not worked with it, and I've had it for a few years now. You just need to find a bed and lay down. Dogs are all just pacing. Is that this is all still in order, and I've taken it out, and my main thing here is that it's just too, I find it too big and clunky even just to handle. Pardon me. For the flip through. It's beautiful. It's lovely. There's a slight shift in what's going on with the imagery and the deck. So it is very RWS, but there are some shifts and changes in it. It's beautiful. And I've seen versions of it where it is trimmed down, so I'm thinking maybe if I just take off this big outer green border, because the backs are very nondescript, let's say. They're not gonna, the backs aren't gonna be drastically affected if we trim that off. That maybe if I just go down to the inside of the border, then actually this will be more comfortable for me to work with, because as it is right now, it's a little taller than your average oracle card, and it still has quite the bow to it. So I find it really, because there's so many cards and they're so big, I do find it really, really awkward to work with. So it's just, I keep meaning to, and I keep thinking, well, maybe if I trim it, but then I'm thinking maybe I should just sell it and find something that I'm more motivated and I'm more in love with. I don't know. It's one of those ones where we're kind of on the fence with. All right. So our third deck, the Goddess Tarot by Kris Waldherr. All right. So this does have a couple of extra cards. It's US games. It's got lovely backs. Okay, dog, you need to stop chewing on that. My goodness. Anything she can get her little teeth into. It comes with a little white book. And the cards they're very lovely. And I just don't reach for this deck. I've had it for a long time, and it's just one of those ones where it's beautiful, but there's so much border. I don't know what they're thinking when they put this much of a border on here, because we could have had this image be the entire card instead of all this backgrounds layered on backgrounds layered on backgrounds. You know, it's like 4 layers of borders later. We got our white border, we've got this brown, we've got the colored background, and then there's a fine filigree border again. And it just makes the cards extra chunky when they don't need to be. And if you wanted them to be this big, why couldn't we just see more? Because the artwork's stunning, and I wish we could just see more of that artwork. But it's just one that it's just not, it just doesn't seem to get dragged out. And it's a shame because it's beautiful. I do have her Lover's Path Tarot, which is amazing. It's absolutely gorgeous. And I do use that a lot, even though it also has about 4 or 5 layers of borders on it. So it is, you know, the art style and the artwork is very, very lovely, but it just does not get the time. All right, so this I had planned to use more. So this is another, I'm sure this, yep, US Games deck. And this actually is really cool because it's not just a tarot deck, it is also a full actual card game. So I totally love it. It's very cool. So we have, you know, this, I wish, again, I feel like this could be bigger, right? But it's like the High Priestess, and you know how Eowyn is guided by her intuition. And the Three of Coins, Bilbo is reading in his library to learn new skills and gain new abilities. So there's a little bit about what's seen in the movie is happening, and that kind of, you know, Three of Cups. Frodo is reunited with Bilbo in Rivendell after a long time, so it's that coming together for a celebration kind of energy, and it's very cute. You know, it's got a lot of extra little things like the little symbols that are happening that give us clues when we're playing the actual card game versus just using them as a tarot deck. So it's kind of neat that they tried to do something multi-system. I do, however, wish that there would be another version of this where we could just have the beautiful imagery and have that be like made larger, you know. But again, I feel like I just ran out of time this year with all the stuff I had happening, and making time to visit with family this year. Kind of, I don't know, the last few years I've had a lot of time to sit and study and go through things and spend time with my decks. And once I'm, you know, once we're back out in the world and doing things, it's harder and harder to find that time. All right, so this deck, which I did not pick up all year, I meant to. I thought it would be cool. So the backs are very cool. So this is Legend, the Arthurian Tarot by Anna-Marie Ferguson. This is another Llewellyn deck. I feel like it came out not too long after the Llewellyn Tarot. So it is again very much based on the legends of King Arthur. So, and it has different stories from the Grail mythos, and it is very RWS based. It's beautiful, and the one thing I find with this deck is it is so slippery that I find it slightly awkward to work with. It shuffles beautifully, but because it's just so, it wants to slide all over the place on me, and it's pretty challenging in that aspect. And I also would like to trim this deck down, although I do like the border background, but I don't know, I just never reach for it. And it's one of those ones I really enjoyed. I spent a lot of years actually reading all the different legends from the time of Arthur and the different myths and the characters and deities and how they change through, if the stories are told through the Welsh tales or British tales or some of the old French ones, and all these fun little variations. And so, you know, in theory, this should be a deck that I work with all the time. And when I first got it, I did work with it a lot. And I meant to kind of get back into it this year and sort of do a comparison between this and the Llewellyn to see what I preferred. But, you know, it was just one of those ones where every time I think about picking it up, I remember how weird and slidey and awkward it is to work because of the cardstock. I think I love the deck, but the cardstock frustrates me. All right, Chrysalis Tarot. It's another US Games. This is it's like brand new because it's like just never been worked with. So it's beautiful. The backs are stunning. The artwork is amazing. It is, even though it's a little white book, there's like a lot in this little white book. I'm not a huge fan of that kind of mustardy brown yellow borders. That always, but you know, in a way it kind of it goes with the backs. Although I would have loved this beautiful blue to have been carried through to here myself, because, you know, when we look at the box, it's like, it just would have been great. But, oh well. So the main reason I have not worked with it is because it is a different system. So, you know, we have like the wheel, the storyteller, who is the hermit. So we get the alternate name. But then we have, you know, the stones and the mirrors. And I mean, the artwork is absolutely just, so I wanted to work with it this year, you know, but it just didn't happen. So we have stones, we have mirrors, and the majority of it, so we have scrolls, stones, mirrors, and what's the other one? Spirals. And it's just different enough in how the imagery relates. Like, it's not a Rider-Waite clone, and because it's not an RWS clone, and the imagery on some of them is just different enough when you sit down to work with it. Like, if you didn't know anything about the deck and that was the first card you pulled, it would, you know, it would be interesting to try to relate. So spirals, is it earthy or is it air? It's kind of, you know, so I don't know. It's like the elements are a little bit mixed up. So it's one that, again, requires study, and I never seem to have the time to sit down and have a dedicated study with one deck at a time. Just the way my practice works. It is gorgeous though. So I keep meaning to, and I'm seriously thinking about just trimming and doing a little trim all the way around the edge on this, just to get rid of those brown borders, because I think that will make the cards look amazing. And I mean, it's nice that it's a US Games deck and it doesn't have the white border, although I think I might almost prefer that white border. So, I mean, this just proves they were capable of printing right to the edge with something, and they chose, I'm not sure why these borders were chosen, to be honest. They don't, to me, really enhance the deck, but, you know, the need to change the system, I think if this was my first deck I ever had, I would have, you know, been using it for a million years and been comfortable. Every time I go to pick it up, though, it's one of those things, like, every time they change the system on me, it takes you a little bit longer to read it, because you have to remember, oh, okay, this equates to that. Okay, now I'm looking at, you know, once you remember this is now equal to swords, then I can go, okay, so the 9 of swords would be this. How does that relate to that image, right? And it's, I don't know. So it's one of those ones I need to spend the time with, and I wish I had had the time, and it just didn't come together. Okay, so Oracle deck, Crystal Spirits Oracle by Collette, Baron-Reid. 58 cards, illustration by Jenna Della Grataglia. The book is just fantastic. As always, Collette always does an amazing one. And so this has our essential meaning, the oracle meaning of it, the relationship, the prosperity, and then the crystal spirit meditation. So this one doesn't have reversals built in, but there's so much information about each card, and I keep meaning to sit down and learn this better. And my biggest frustration, although it is gorgeous, absolutely beautiful, I really miss the keywords that are on most decks, you know, like jade. What does jade mean? Well, if you're just learning crystals, how accurate is her interpretation of jade to, say, a traditional interpretation of jade, or what energies it resonates with? How does that translate into an oracle message? They're beautiful. They're stunning. They're beyond, like, of course it's beautiful. Jenna's artwork is always gorgeous. It's always wonderful to look at, but it's the fact that I always have to use the guidebook. So for me, I'd rather just, you know, shuffle a deck and pull a card and know what that card means. And eventually I would do that with this, but it's like with this, Amazonite. Okay, so now we're going to go, oh, that's nice, right at the beginning of the book. So the essential meaning, truth, revelation, the evolution, and natural flow of events. Perfect. But if it's in a relationship, it means something else. If it's your prosperity message, it means something else. Then there's, you know, the meditation. So it's like you can do really in-depth work with it, but it just, there were so many on my list this year, and this is one that it just didn't get the love that I feel like it deserved, because I do love this deck. But I feel like if I had keywords so it could help me to learn or spark my memory, I would totally have used this so much more. I end up actually using her I have the original version of her map oracle, and I actually use that way more because the phrase that goes with the card tells you what the card's about. You know, so the card's title is relative as opposed to just being the name of a stone. Okay, all right. Oh, looks like we have another oracle deck. What a surprise. Okay, so Kyle Gray's Gateway of Light Activation Oracle. Artwork by Jennifer Hawkyard. Okay, 44 cards. So this is another Hay House deck. And again, it comes with a really nice guidebook. So it gives you something about the image. It gives you a way to connect in with that energy and what your message is. So I thought this was a cool concept. Actually, I have 2 copies of this. My first copy arrived damaged. A lot of the cards had whatever the lamination was on it. It was all crinkled and rumpled, and some of the cards were just illegible because of it. And I had ordered from the publisher. I contacted them and said, hey, this is what's happening, and sent them some pictures, and you know, they immediately rectified the situation for me and sent me a new deck. So this is beautiful. It's not really, I don't feel like this is an oracle that I can work with for reading for people. It's more like deciding what kind of energies you want to work with and then picking one, you know. It's gorgeous. The backs are beautiful. It's got like a matte kind of, not quite that rose petal, but that really soft finish to it. So, I mean, it shuffles, and it glides. It's just a little bit, it's not quite as smooth as it could be, right? So let's look at a card. Solar Light Upgrade, the solar plexus chakra, inner fire, and willpower. So, I mean, reading wise, some of, you know, a card like this coming out in a reading, that could make a lot of sense. Some of them just don't. Now, when you go to look it up, it is alphabetical, but they're not numbered. So that's kind of interesting. And the counts for nothing with these. So we have ones at the beginning that are the central sun or whatever it is. So it's just one that I love it, and I look at it every once in a while, but I don't really use it. And this year I kind of meant to study with it more and spend time with it, because like it's just stunning. It's so beautiful to look at. I just haven't decided yet how useful it is for me. because I've kind of reached a place where I need my decks to have a solid use in order to stay in my collection. Like I need to be using them for readings, or I need to be using them in my own practice, and I would like to get to know this deck, but it's just not quite come about. Okay, so this deck, which I love and have altered ever so slightly, the Vampire Tarot by Robert M. Place. All right, so it comes in this huge chunky box, and we've got our book, which is a really fabulous book. It's got so much information in it. It's very, very cool. I meant to take it out this year, and I wanted to do, the cards are so big. So I wanted to actually do some, you know, Halloween Samhain readings, and do a bunch of stuff in October, and use this deck and use my other Halloween deck that I have. And I just didn't happen. So this is super glossy. It did have, I never used it because it had pointed corners. And then I went and trimmed it. And then I edged it. So it's edged in silver. So it's got this beautiful silvery edging to it. So we have the, our vials of holy water. We have the majors, which are stunning. So the court cards are all people from Gothic and vampire history, right? Like Carmilla, so she's the knave of holy water. We have our knives, we have stakes, we have garlic flowers. It's just fabulous. We have Bram Stoker's the king of garlic flowers. Lord Ruthven is the knave of garlic flowers. It's so cool. It's so fun. I absolutely love this deck. I kept thinking I was going to trim it down even further, but I kind of like it being a little bit bigger and a little bit chunkier. And you know, October was a little crazy time for me, so I actually didn't get around to taking this deck out and using it, because it's kind of like, it's not like a daily reader. And so I'm really kind of bummed out that I never actually got to use it. The Brides. I love this card because it's a really, really fun, sort of cheesy, vampy deck. And it's not like, you know, there's some decks that are vampire themed that could be, you know, year-round decks. This to me is very much just like a Halloween-y kind of deck. All right, and so my last deck here is the Wisdom of the House of Night Oracle Cards by P.C. Kest and Collette Baron-Reid. So this deck, and I took it out, shuffled it, took a read through the book, which is, you know, it's adequate. It's not got a lot written in here. It's not as in-depth as some of her other books, right? So P.C. Kest wrote this series, The House of Night, and it's about these different vampire characters and things that they get up to, and people from the books. So the backs are beautiful, and again, it's got pointed corners. So I kept thinking I will trim them, or at least do the corners on them, but then they're gilded, so I need to get rid of all the gilding, not just the corners. Then I would have to trim it further down, and that just never happened. So it's been shuffled twice and put back in the box and not used since. But it's absolutely gorgeous, right? And this is a much earlier deck. The artwork is again by Jenna Della Grataglia, and it's beautiful. Absolutely gorgeous, and I've just never really used it. So And this was again one that I had planned to use this year. And it's got such a nice sort of gothic vibe to it that I really was planning to use it to do readings with the Vampire Tarot and my Halloween Tarot, and it just didn't happen. And I feel kind of, you know, I've never used this deck, and it's every time I pull it out and look at it, I'm like, absolutely gorgeous, and I feel like it deserves its place, right? So I think the main issue is that there was a lack of time, and with the pointed corners, for me, it's uncomfortable to shuffle, so I won't use a pointed corner deck a lot. When it comes to a deck where I have to learn, right? So with these two, these were definitely decks I need to learn with, right? This one is, again, a system to learn. This one is just too big. This one, the corners are pointed. This, to me, is just too specific, right? This one I meant to spend time with, and it just didn't happen, you know. This one, the cardstock is kind of not the greatest cardstock, right? So they all kind of have something about them that just, you know, it's like you have to sit and spend the time to study, and if you don't have the time to study, the decks just don't get used. And, you know, it's kind of really unfortunate. I almost feel like if I kept my collection really small and only had 10 decks, I would know each of them inside and out. And I have at least a dozen decks that I know inside and out, and it's because I use them all the time. So these ones, I believe, are all going to stay on my list to work with for next year. But yeah, it's not like any of them have anything wrong with them, right? It's just what fits my practice right now, what I have time to do, and you know what, where's my comfort zone this year? So that is, you know, it's kind of sad. I especially love this one, like decks that I love and are so beautiful, and then they just don't get used. It's kind of sad for me. So maybe some of them will find new homes, but maybe some of them I will make a much more concerted effort to get to know and to use more. And I think that actually might make me feel better, because I feel like this hashtag, I was like, yeah, that's going to be so easy because there's a stack of them sitting there beside my desk waiting for me to use them all year. But it kind of just sort of makes me feel sad that I just never, you know, I feel like the year is gone, and I didn't get to spend as much time going in depth with my cards as I had wanted to. So anyways, I hope that this, you know, maybe gives you some insight into maybe looking a little deeper at how you use cards within your own practice, and, you know, how you're prioritizing your tarot or oracle practice, and, you know, what makes a deck that's happy and comfortable that you use all the time. Like, what is that quality we can't quite define, that just, you know, puts a deck into constant regular practice versus another deck that's just as beautiful, just as lovely, you know, but somehow there's a bit of a disconnect, right? Okay, so thank you so much. If you are still here, wonderful, right? So I hope that you have enjoyed that, and if you've stuck around and you want to hit that little thumbs up, like and subscribe, share it with your friends, that would be amazing. In any case, I hope you have a wonderful day, and take care.